You're listening to the best radio in the universe. Non-stop music. All day long.
You are listening to New Jersey's badass radio legend, Gregory Joseph on New Jersey 88.7 WGAI T-Rock Oon, baby.
Good afternoon. Finally, the day has come. It's April 29th of 2025. I am Gregory Joseph, and you are not. And this is a special one today. We have Joel Hoekstra with us. For those that don't know, that might have been living under a rock for many, many years, he's best known for, and one of my favorite guitarists for the group Whitesnake. So if you've never heard of them, this is probably the wrong show for you anyway. Welcome to New Jersey 88.7 FM, WGAT. It is the Mean Machine Radio Show. And like I said, it's a special edition one. So we're not going to make the man wait too long. So we're going to bring him in. But just to give you a little bit of background on how great of a guitarist he is. He has done so many things, and he still does. And he'll produce and play for private, he does so much. I'll let him tell you, because it's hard for me to even comprehend how much this man, I thought I was busy. This guy's really busy, and he's excellent at what he does. And you can check him out on joelhoekstra.com, which we will get into in a little bit. But just to give you a little bit of backstory, he has been with Whitesnake since 2010. And you've probably seen him in Trans-Siberian Orchestra. He's plays with Cher and so many other people. And we're going to show some pictures and have a lot of great conversation right here. And I'm not going to make the man wait any longer. I'm excited to have him. So he's with us live via satellite, obviously, from New York City, which is our next door neighbor right here to Jersey. So let's bring him in. There he is. Joel, what's happening, my man?
Hey, what's happening, dude? Thanks for having me on.
Not a problem. Thanks for being here. So this is what we do during a weekday. You and I, we just kind of hang out and rock on. I mean, that's the way to be, right? I mean, why not? Especially to my audience, so Gen X and everything, with being the guitarist of Whitesnake, which I think is just. I mean, I grew up, as a teenager, and this stuff was like on my wall, like, and David Coverdale and all the guys, and then here you are sitting with us. So this is great. So thank you very much. Thank you for being here. What exactly, for people that might not know you, you have a little background, because we could talk about the vintage stuff and everything, and I love that kind of stuff. But let's go chronologically, if that's all right. How did you get started? I mean, you didn't just get that good overnight. So can you give us a little background there? That'd be great.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I grew up in the burbs of Chicago, and my parents were classical musicians, so they had me going really early on cello and piano when I was a little kid. And at that age, I just wanted to be a pitcher. I just wanted to play baseball. But then I saw AC/DC right when MTV was starting. I saw Angus Young, and I thought, well, that's the coolest guy I've ever seen in my life. This is right when Back in Black came out. So that's really the album that kind of launched everything for me, and still holds up, stands the test of time. I think you and I talked about it the other day when we spoke briefly, but one of the best hard rock albums ever, if not the best. And so that really lit a fuse in me, and made me go to my parents and say, I want a guitar. And I think they were thinking, oh, great, maybe he wants to be the next Segovia and then play classical guitar. And then a couple weeks later, I was playing Black Sabbath riffs, and they were going, what have we done? But yeah, that's kind of how things got going for me. Yeah.
Back in Black, not one bad tune on that album. 1980.
All great songs, really great songs. It was a great combination, them getting together with Mutt Lange.
So it's probably not only exemplified and started your career, so to speak, but I mean, what could be better? I mean, that's like a Hall of Fame classic one. It probably started a lot of people, but I didn't even know that. See, we mentioned, but I didn't even realize that was your inspiration, and what a great one to pick. So that came in. So that's the 80s. Now, drifting in, you're just playing local? Because when you hear from different people that have become famous like yourself, but very grounded and very down to earth, which is always nice, it seems like to me, just the short period of time that we spoke over the phone, that you're not pretentious, like, and there's people that I've met like that and everything, but you don't forget where you came from, and you don't talk down to people because, oh, I'm great and I'm doing this and I've done that. But you're not like that. That shows a lot of class, a lot of character. Not everybody has it. So I appreciate that. But our fans and the people, our listeners, need to hear that, because you do it with such elegance and such grace, and that's the way it should be done, in my opinion. Can you weigh in on that? Is that easy for you to do, or
Well, the way things kind of played out for me is everything took off kind of later in life. So, I mean, I feel like I had a lot of years of just being like a working class guitar player, being a pro, and honing my skills in all these different areas. I always did it with guitar from the time I got out of school. I've really been just nothing but a professional guitar player from the age of 20, I guess. But it took a while. Took a while for things to open up. So I guess I don't know that, and maybe the Midwestern upbringing or whatever it helps keep you kind of real, I guess, with people.
Grounded.
And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, man, that's all I ever really wanted was to be a professional guitar player. My goal was never to be like a rock star. I sort of where I grew up, that was like unattainable. We didn't have contacts for things like that. It just seemed like,
Yeah.
well, that'll never happen. So let
Yeah.
me just
Whoops.
go after this because I really like playing guitar
Yeah.
and put a lot into it. And that was all really came from just a really pure place, just really enjoying doing it. And that's that. Sometimes I like to say the last career decision I ever really had to make was when I was 11 years old. I mean, I was just picking up the guitar and going like, okay, I like doing this. I guess is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, just like in oh, by the way, whoops, I became a rock star. Oh shucks, be. And so you knew at a young age. I mean, and then you pick up your guitar. What was your first guitar? I'm sure you remember your first guitar.
Yeah, briefly, my stepmother's acoustic guitar. That did not go well. I did my initial experience was starting on that to prove that I was going to do it before my parents would buy me an electric guitar, and they had me taken from somebody teaching me the three notes on the high E string out of the book, and I was like, this isn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to learn how to play rock and rock out, and luckily I had a local friend there who knew, like, I went over to his house and he knew all these rock riffs. He was playing the riff for Crazy Train or whatever. I went, my mind kind
Nice.
of exploded. How'd you learn this? Oh, you got to go take from my teacher. He teaches rock stuff. And so I had a teacher who taught me nothing but rock songs in the early going. And that really, really inspired me and got me going. I mean, I was in love with that style of music. And, obviously, as the years go by, I'm really open-minded musically. Like, I just love to play, man, at the end of the day. But the music that started me out was hard rock and heavy metal, and that ended up being what kind of clicked for me in the end. It was an odd timeline for me because by the time I got out of guitar school and became a professional, that was kind of right when the guitar solo died. Like Smells Like Teen Spirit came out, and it was like not cool to be playing guitar solos or anything fancy on guitar.
Wow.
So yeah, I ended up doing all kinds of other stuff to make a living and be able to keep playing guitar. So, and I really enjoyed a lot of that, playing a lot of stuff that people wouldn't expect from a guitar player from Whitesnake. I've been in acid
Right.
jazz bands and hip hop bands and all kinds of crazy stuff, man. Playing weddings
Hip
along
hop.
over the years, all kinds of singer songwriters playing acoustic with them, singing backing vocals and whatever it took to kind of stay out there and improve my
Relevant.
skills
Yeah.
as a musician. Yeah, I mean, in names that you may have heard of, I mean, some of the gigs that I've actually done were playing with the Turtles, like Happy Together, like Flo and Eddie,
Oh
and
my
Big
god.
Brother and the Holding Company, Janis Joplin's band back in the day. So those are some of the bands that people are like, huh? Because I don't have the normal trajectory of hitting it big in the 80s and selling a million albums or whatever. That's a lot of the guys that I jam with. That's kind of the way it worked. They broke early and then they've just kind of rode off of that. With me, it
Right.
was like I missed that boat and then just kind of did all this crazy stuff until it became cool again. That 80s resurgence, I call it, started really, I guess, in the early 2000s, kind of right
Right.
about like 2000. For me, I joining Night Ranger, which I spent 7 years with them, kind of 2008 through 14. And that's actually technically when I joined Whitesnake, not 2010. I think you misunderstood. I joined Trans-Siberian Orchestra when I was 2000 and 2010,
Okay.
but Whitesnake was 2014 for me joining. So I've been with David 11 years, and wonderful time, great time.
11 years. For those that don't know who you're referring to as David Coverdale,
Yeah.
just you never know. Hey, listen, if you could get the Turtles, David Coverdale, and Trans-Siberian Orchestra all in the same paragraph, that was not bad. That's a high five on that one, man. That's amazing. Yeah, you just said it. Like, you would say, okay, this guy from Whitesnake, you mentioned Crazy Train in there, by the way. I didn't miss that one. But that's, yeah, you wouldn't expect, like, no, this guy's not in Whitesnake. He's doing this or that. He's got to be a certain certain aura about him, but you're about the music. You're about, like, there's musicians and then there's artists, and you're like both, and it's ingrained that you want to play. You want to play, and you're going to try to make the people around you better, which you have. I mean, you have those certain licks that you do, and then you will make a YouTube video, which I saw, trying to help people. I mean, you don't get paid for that. You're just showing, okay, let me do some slides, let me show you some stuff, and just doing it because you love doing it. That's the best part, in my opinion, regardless of who you've played with. Do you feel that way
Yeah.
too? Like, I mean, you
A
would have.
lot of that stuff on YouTube kind of ran in conjunction with me having a column in Guitar World magazine, which
Okay.
they titled "The School of Rock" at the time. But that was really kind of limited. It was kind of teaching like 12, 16 bars of music. It needs to fit on one page. And then sometimes the videos that they would show, I'd go a little bit further in than the magazine itself. So I've done a lot of work with Guitar World, and even some of the albums that I've released, they'll do some play alongs where I show how I play the songs off of my albums and whatnot. And Whitesnake album, Flesh and Blood, I did a bunch of tutorials on how to play those solos, etc. But I also do still counsel at Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp. That's something I do regularly. The teaching thing is kind of a big part of my background. That really supported me in the early days when things were tough. I had 70 students a week when I got out of school, and just kind of gigged in bars on weekends and like the Chicago burbs until things took off for me. And honestly, man, I would have starved to death if I didn't do that. I don't know how I would have made it. So teaching really, I owe a lot of my success to being able to do that. And even when COVID hit, so it'd been about a 20-year window where I'd only been performing and recording. And I kind of brought that back because I thought, well, I mean, I guess I could teach some guitar lessons, remotely here from home. And that's something that I'm still doing to date. I still carry about 20, 25 students a week, something like that right now. So in addition to sessions and prepping for gigs and going off and doing gigs and touring, and I try to keep that going as well.
No, we know you're proud of all of it. It's just there's so much. It's something's got to get pushed down at some point. But that's funny though. Yeah, I didn't like that, so I'm going to push that one down the bottom. All right, I've been wanting to ask this, and I'm sure you've gotten it before, but not from me. What is it like when, okay, well, first of all, you're referring to like the end of like the hair bands, late 80s grunge, or whatever you want to call the Seattle sound, started the early 90s, kind of pushed that back a little bit, where it wasn't so much, it was more banging than it was strumming. That's what I was told. But then, as you said, as you get into the late 90s, early 2000s, there's another shift. And that's what you had just mentioned. So that was a welcome one, I would think, because now you've been in Whitesnake since 2014, right? And you already have the changing of the guard several times prior to even going in that band. So you've already been through different, as the decades changed, you're bringing back like Whitesnake. I mean, they stayed relevant for what, 30 years, 40, I mean, I remember one of my favorites, like I mentioned, was from Slide It In, which was in 84, but their first album came out, what, 81?
And earlier than that,
Really?
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, you need to go back. I don't know the year offhand, but when David was done with Deep Purple, he started the band in the UK, and there was a long period of time where Whitesnake was successful in the UK, and then in America they were kind of popularized, as you mentioned, with the Slide It In album, and then the
Right.
'87 album, and then Slip of the Tongue that followed that, where Steve Vai came into the band. And that was kind of the MTV era where Whitesnake became known
Right.
like they are in the States. Most people say, oh yeah, Whitesnake, Tawny Katane on the hood of the car. And
On the
yeah,
Jaguars, right. How could I
yeah,
forget?
but really, if you go internationally, there are people that really know the Whitesnake history all the way back, and it was a little bit more of like a really, really great like blues rock band in the early days, where they weren't going for commercial success. It was a little bit more of just like everything was like a killer album track back then, but they weren't pushing for like, hey, let's make this a really commercial like radio type hit. But the band has always been great musically. It's just been apples and oranges, I guess, in terms of stylistically. As the '80s happened, and bands were playing more flamboyantly, the look was, the hair was getting big, and all that stuff. They I guess, came over to the US, and there was a little bit of an image adaptation, and found great success here in the US. And those were, I think, the most successful records. And,
Crossover.
certainly, yeah, I mean, that's something that David certainly hangs his hat on, even when making up the set list, on the all the way to the end of our farewell tour, which was cut short. But, we'd be playing primarily the hits from those albums, from Slide It In and from the '87 album and from Slip of the Tongue. And then we'd throw in a couple of the older songs. But those were commercially did the best.
I go again. Now that was already pre-released in the UK. And can you explain what you mentioned the other day? If you can touch on that, like I don't think David did want to do that here, and then it ended up being humongous. Like I don't know if it was by accident. Can you mention that, because I was interested when you talked about that.
That's a kind of a common thread with the repackaging of Whitesnake in the US. It's really not just Here I Go Again, but you could cite like Fool for Your Lovin', which was a single on Slip of the Tongue as well, that had already been recorded. So I think that they really saw that, hey, there's a whole new audience for these songs. And I think that's something that initially was probably thought like, well, that song's been released. I mean, if you were in a band and you've already released a song, you go like, well, why are we putting that on the new album?
Again,
It's a song that's on an album already. But ultimately proved to be a really great move for the band, because I mean that it really did explode and changed, I suppose, the whole I guess success level of Whitesnake's history. The fact that it was re-released, it found such success. I mean, MTV wasn't a thing when it was out before, and MTV really was a game changer in many regards. I mean, you could even, Exhibit A. I mean, my first exposure to Angus Young wasn't in an arena. It was seeing him on MTV and going, that guy is the coolest. I mean, it really did change a lot, and was responsible for a lot in the '80s. I mean, even my time with Night Ranger, they were early on in the game and getting like Don't Tell Me You Love Me on MTV, and that really changed the success level of that track. I mean, as far as like where that went on the charts or radio versus having something that was just in steady rotation on MTV really helped to launch Night Ranger as well. So not just me and my interest in it, but the band's success level that I've been able to be a part of over the years.
And you were part of Night Ranger. I almost forgot about that. You've done so many things. That was almost, would you say, about 7 years?
Yeah, 7 years.
Wow. And that was prior to Whitesnake, or?
Yeah, that was like 2008 through 14, essentially. Yeah.
Okay. So that was time well spent, because I know they had a lot of hits, and they got a lot of airplay, especially in this area, like in our area, New York, New Jersey area, and definitely out in California. But yeah, they got the airplay. But yeah, that's amazing. I mean, as a front man, I mean, you're sharing time with David Coverdale, which a lot of people, by the way, when we mentioned this too, people forget. For those that didn't even know that, he was singing for Deep Purple, one of the greatest bands of all time, one of my favorites of all time. And hearing him do Smoke on the Water, and now here you are, because that's what, early 70s, here you are standing back to back with him on stage, and you're singing like Slide It In, or you're singing, Love Ain't No Stranger, or whatever the case may be. And there he is, the same guy that when you were younger in out west, now you're on the same stage. What was that?
That was basically me expressing interest in sending out some pre-existing videos of things that I was a part of, like some Night Ranger videos or whatever. And I didn't hear back initially. And I thought, come on, I've got to be able to get an audition for this. And I reached out to my friend Phil Carson, who manages the band Foreigner. I had filled in for Mick Jones in Foreigner on a tour when Mick had kind of gone down with an illness. And that really, I guess, impressed Phil, because I was able to get their set together in a day. Basically, I had about 24 hours notice before I was on with them. That package at that time in 2011 was Night Ranger, Foreigner, Journey, and Mick Jones went down, and so we were out together. I learned Foreigner set and went on with both bands. I was going on with Night Ranger and then going on with Foreigner in place of Mick Jones. So anyway, Phil is British, and I thought, I bet he knows David, and he did, and sent David an email, and then that sort of piqued David's interest, I guess, hearing from Phil, and had me out for an audition, and that went really well. I mean, that was just kind of like we're doing right now, having a talk only in person.
Right.
And then went down into the studio, and he put up some of the stuff they were working on for what became the Purple album, and had me solo over it. And I'm pretty sure what I played on my audition actually is on the album. I kind of improvised a solo section, and then there was a harmony solo after that, and I ended up kind of playing both parts of the harmony solo. And I think just me putting that together was cool. We took a break, had some dinner together, and then sang a little bit, and David offered me the position in the band. So it went really well. David and I just kind of clicked on a personal level, I think. At the stage of the game that he was at, he's looking for people that came in and were very professional and had a lot of respect for the situation, just people with good attitudes. And obviously you got to have the musical ability to play the material and back it up. But I think a lot of it with him is just kind of like, David's really big on positive energy, people that read like they're excited to be there. And I definitely was. I mean, I really wanted to have the opportunity to join. So I think that we were a really great fit in that regard. And I was just well known enough from having done at that point in time Night Ranger for 7 years and be a part of the Broadway's Rock of Ages band. And I'd been with TSO for 4 years, Trans-Siberian Orchestra being TSO. So just well known enough. But one thing that was lacking for me at that point in time was touring internationally as extensively as Whitesnake does. Night Ranger does a lot of work in the US, and we would go to Japan, we'd release an album. But Whitesnake really worked a lot of other territories, like South America is something that was really cool for me to get down there for the first time with them. And certainly UK, Whitesnake is, really popular in the UK still from the aforementioned history there, and Europe, Australia. So, went to a lot of different territories with them, and the catalog is just smoking. I mean, the Whitesnake songs are fabulous, and obviously a great history of great guitar players being in the band. So there's some cachet that comes with that by getting hired to play guitar in Whitesnake, having, people like John Sykes and Steve Vai and Vivian Campbell, Adrian Vandenberg, Bernie Marsden. So, I mean, there's a list of great players, Doug Aldrich, that to be able to hop in and play guitar for that band, I guess it resonates with rock fans a lot because they go, wow, I mean, you got to be good to get the gig. So
because it's
I mean, that's been my mentality all along. I mean, joining Night Ranger, that really was a guitar gig as well. I mean, Brad Gillis and Jeff Watson were one of the great duos of the 80s for sure. Especially as far as their identifiability. Brad, known for, being the king of the whammy bar, just all his lyrical playing with the whammy, and Jeff Watson had really not only pioneered the 8-finger technique, which luckily as a kid I had been taught and exposed to, so that really paid off for me in the long run. But Jeff also just a great player, almost more of an old school kind of like Michael Schenker style, like pentatonic playing, and his general picking chops are really great too. So for me, things just kind of lined up. I mean, Jeff was a gold top player who was tall with blonde hair, and I was a gold top player with, blonde hair and a gold top. And, I mean, I fit the bill, I guess, as far as them going, hey, he kind of looks like our old guy. He can do the 8-finger technique.
Right.
Let's hire him. But, as far as I was concerned, the way I wanted to represent that for fans was if I was coming, I'd want it to feel as close to seeing the original Night Ranger as possible with Jeff in there. So that was kind of how I viewed it. I was not trying to rip off Jeff. I was trying to pay homage to Jeff and his contributions to the band. And for me, that's about putting the band and the fans before yourself when you get a gig. And same goes for Whitesnake. I mean, coming in, you do your best you can. Certain things that you eventually run into limitations when you're trying to play other people's A game stuff, and you go like, man, that's kind of a little bit out of my wheelhouse. I need to approximate and do the best I can with what I'm capable of doing. And then, so eventually you kind of do end up putting your own spin on some of the stuff, just, simply off of the way you play versus other people. But I think it's important when you join a retro act, an act that's been established for decades already, that you put the fans of the band before yourself.
Which is what you did. I mean, you were able to hit it. That's funny though. It's not like, oh yeah, you look the part and you sound the part, and but you're Joel. You're going to be that person no matter what. But thank you for answering that, because I always wanted to know what that was like to go from watching this guy in Deep Purple and then all of a sudden, boom, you're on the stage. Not boom, but I'm just saying as it proceeded. And
well, David Coverdale has a great knack for making you feel like he's just one of the guys when you hang out. David's a lot about the laughs. If anybody follows him on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, David is, he's got a great sense of humor, and he loves being part of the musical process when you're recording, which is how I started with them. I joined the band and we were recording the Purple album. You're just hanging out, and it just feels like he's one of the guys. And then all of a sudden he'll start talking about working with Jimmy Page or Richie Blackmore, and you got to go like, oh yeah, that's right, this guy.
Oh, by the way, a bunch of Hall of Famers.
David, to his credit, was never interested in having anybody come into Whitesnake and play like somebody else. He always wants people to showcase who they are, and he was very big on that. And really an amazing boss in that he always champions his players and builds them up. Really better than anybody I've ever seen out there, really, in terms of what he does in terms of tweeting us and promoting the people that are in his band. David is exceptional with that and very generous. We just kind of clicked. I mean, we got along. I had respect for that. And when I joined the band, he kind of said, all right, I'm going to get you out there. I'm going to help build you up. And you just come in and you do your job and treat this like very professionally. And I never had any issues with that. I mean, he was always fantastic every step of the way. And, technically I'm still part of the band. I mean, we're in active touring at this point in time, but, as far as the interaction, David still is on our band thread on a regular basis. Maybe not quite daily, but maybe every 2-3 days he's posting on our band text thread, and we're still friends and keep in touch. And I went out and did some recording with him on a box set reissue a year or two ago, and that was great to hang with him, and we had a great time. And he's just a great guy.
That's what it sounds like. And it didn't come around like, and we're talking vintage stuff here. We're talking about, he didn't say, okay, you've got the gig, but you're constantly like under the microscope. No, it was, you do your thing. You're in Whitesnake now. You know what I mean? And that's once again, it blows me away, because you're like, oh, by the way, yeah, you did work with, that guy. Oh, what's his name? Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. Like, it's like, wow, like, could that be more intimidating than that? But that's not what happened with you. All right. So you have that's pretty much leading up to now. And I mentioned this to you as well. Just a few of the things. I wanted to show the picture real quick to those that are going to be watching this on our YouTube a little bit later on. So there's you with David. We'll flash that one again. That's a pretty cool one. I like that one. Let's see. You do stuff with Cher as well. Did you want to just take a moment and then mention that, because she's been relevant since the 60s, since Sonny Bono and all that. I mean, she's still doing her thing. I don't know if you wanted to touch on what you're doing with her.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's something that came about in 2017. David Coverdale was going to have knee replacement surgery, so basically gave us all the heads up. Look, we can't tour this year. Sorry, guys. And that allowed me to reach out to people and say, hey, I don't need a new gig per se, but if anybody needs a fill-in this year, just basically all my friends and colleagues in the business, and saying, keep an eye out for me. I would love to stay out there and do something cool this year. And my friend Justin Derrico, who plays for Pink and also is the guitarist on The Voice, was talking with his co-guitarist on The Voice, Dave Barry, who was Cher's guitarist at the time. And Dave said, I need a sub for the Cher shows this year. And Justin had just gotten my text and said, I know this is going to be kind of wild suggestion, but what about Joel Hoekstra from Whitesnake? And he's done a lot of stuff as far as understanding how to fill in and play things note for note. Like I've done legitimate pit gigs on Broadway. And when you play on Broadway, you kind of have to emulate the person like note for note, like nuance for nuance. And which I did. I just basically learned what Dave did with Cher when I went in to fill in, and it ended up that Justin got pulled out on the road with Pink doing a promo tour, and Dave was really tied up with The Voice. And so initially it was going to just be like a few shows, and it ended up really being a few years. And then things kind of went dormant for a bit during the COVID era and whatnot. And then just recently I've been able to be a part of a couple of things with her. She invited me to play with her at her what do they call it now? Induction. Thank you. Into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Gosh, brain freeze. Her induction to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So I went and did that, and that was a blast, live on the air, of course. And so that was not her full band. It was kind of the Roots as her band, and me added to the Roots of all things. So that was great fun. And then, as luck would have it, the SNL 50 event that just happened here in New York City, they had what was called the SNL Homecoming concert, and Cher played there as well and invited me to come do that with her. So that was really nice of her to reach out after what had been I don't know, a handful of years of me not working with her. And was great to get back out there with her and play a little bit, and wonderful to see everybody from that camp. That's one of those weird things. That and being on the Rock of Ages show on Broadway are kind of two things that I always cite as examples of just staying open-minded as a musician. Because when I was a kid playing Black Sabbath riffs, I wasn't going, someday I'm going to play with Cher.
Yeah,
but the way it works out when it's later in life and you're a little bit more open-minded, you kind of end up having these great life experiences through just kind of remaining open-minded and see where life takes you sometimes. And same with the Broadway thing. I never was like aspiring to be a guitar player on Broadway. That was never in my plan, but staying open-minded and dabbling in it and seeing what doors might open, that ended up becoming really at that point in time a life-changing gig for me, getting the Rock of Ages gig on Broadway, because that ran over 6 years, and then all the people who have written the songs or played on the songs over the course of those 6 years came down to the show. One of the best examples of that was during that tour of Night Ranger, Foreigner, Journey that I had mentioned. The tour stopped in New York City, and I was able to take that night and go back into my Broadway gig, which I'd been subbing out, play on Rock of Ages, and everybody came down. All the guys from Journey came down, and Foreigner and Night Ranger, and everybody was there that night. And so it just kind of turned into like this, the tour almost took over Broadway that night. So that was one of those really fun moments where you're going, gosh, about 4 or 5 days ago, I was freaking out working on the Foreigner set and got that together. And then here's everybody watching me play a different set up here. So
how long ago was that when you're on because with Broadway, you're on there just about every night. I mean,
yeah, that's eight shows a week. Typically, you have Monday off with that, so you have single shows typically Tuesday through Friday, and then doubles on Saturday and Sunday, 2 shows a day. So yeah, that period of time, because that ran 6 years, and I could sub it out to go play with Night Ranger at that point in time, or with Trans-Siberian Orchestra on their tour, which is also 8 shows a week. I was probably doing more shows than there were years in the days in the year. So I was doing, I mean, a ridiculous amount. If you included sessions and things like that, I was probably doing 400 gigs a year for about 6 years there.
I'm just in awe from the part that you could have in the same year. And by the way, with all the people that used to be in it, so you have like alumni there, pretty much, the people that have previous played, and now the people currently, and that's kind of cool. But you've got you get guys, Whitesnake, Journey, Foreigner, Night Ranger. I mean, the list goes on, and they're all in one place at the same time, is what you're trying to say. I mean,
yeah, but them coming to the Broadway show, and I really got to meet all the guys through that had been a part of the making that music during that time, and it really having that Broadway gig. It sounds like it's not the most beautiful like thing for me to say, but the best thing about that was I could still sub out and support touring during that time. Because if I took that 6 years to say I'm only going to play on this Broadway show, that might have been detrimental to my touring career or being in the rock scene. But during that time, I was still able to play with Night Ranger and Trans-Siberian Orchestra. So that really became I guess, a fruitful period for me to be able to like spread my wings in all those different areas.
Well, yeah. I mean, and by the way, just so that people they might or might not know, I'm guessing if they know anything about you, you're that busy doing all the things you do, plus you have a family. I mean, you're married, you have kids, and everything. Oh, by the way, you got that going on as well. So that's. I mean, when do you sleep? Do you sleep? Because I don't sleep. I wait. I don't know. I'm thinking you wait. You don't sleep, do you?
I sleep. I just don't waste a lot of time during the days. But I usually take a little bit of time to start my day, have some coffee, wake up and get going, and then I start working, and I pretty much work until the end of the night, and I do the same thing. I always need like an hour or two to wind down at the end of the day, but I pretty much just work a lot. And I describe myself as a genuine workaholic, not like the people that say they're workaholics, but like I actually just kind of exist trying to get things done. I suppose part of that is out of the need to work hard in music. I think being a musician is not easy, like to make it all work and make it click. And then some of it is enthusiasm, what we're seeing, like the result of hard work. And you go, hey, I made it this far. Because like I said, when I was a kid, I grew up pretty much in a poor family in blue collar suburb of Chicago. None of this was supposed to happen. So when you do taste some success and have some good things happen, that kind of makes you realize, like, hey, if I work even harder, maybe I can have more success than this.
Yeah, I mean, the essence of a workaholic. Well, because you love doing what you do. I have flashed up there for those that are listening that they're not able to watch, letting them see there. We have a picture of you, and that's Paul Stanley. You did some stuff with Gene Simmons as well, didn't you? Or was it with Kiss, or was it with them individually?
No, Gene and well, I had a show last year where my friend Brandon Gibbs and I, who do acoustic duo shows, opened for Gene at a gig. And much to my surprise, Gene was really, really amicable and super friendly. I was kind of terrified to talk to him, and basically just said, hey, come in our dressing room. And basically we just sat there and talked for like an hour while I warmed up to go out and play. And I just thought, man, that was not what I expected. I think I told him straight up. I said, man, this is not what I expected. And he said, why? I said, because I'm terrified of you. I mean, he's an intimidating guy. And so as luck would have it, about a month later, I was invited to be the guest guitarist on Dancing with the Stars last year. It was a hair metal episode, and then they said, and special guest judge Gene Simmons, and I went, oh, I guess I'm going to cross paths with Gene again. And so there we were, of all things. And again, there's another example of just remaining open-minded, because you go, I never in my life did I say someday I'm going to play on a dance show on network television, but it's something where there's 2 million viewers, and you go, gosh, I mean, this is probably great exposure for me and for even this style of music, even though it's not probably the diehards of that musical style are like, oh, come on, like they're playing at network style TV, but network TV style here. But in the end, I think it still does something good for that style of music. It exposes younger people to those songs, and it piques interest in that style. So for me, that was really cool. And then Gene was there, and I got to talk to him a little bit there as well. So he really surprisingly very, very nice to me.
But you're the guy from Whitesnake. Why would you be petrified to meet the demon? Come on. Well, you know what? I was scared of Gene Simmons up until about 40 minutes ago. No, I mean, when I was little, but I mean, that's something too. I mean, he's another one where you didn't expect him, maybe like Coverdale, maybe a weird comparison, but just down to earth and just being cool, like one of the guys, not treating you any differently, which is a pleasant surprise, I guess, in that industry or any. I would be nervous meeting Gene Simmons, just for the fact that he's Gene Simmons, and he's like, the demon.
I
So,
well, I mean, in fairness, those are people that have achieved a lot more in the business than I have that you're talking about. So, I mean, I look at like what I've done in my career as certainly from what I expected successful, but like in the grand scheme of things, when you look at people like that, you know, they would probably deem it unsuccessful. they would they've achieved a lot more in the business than I have. So yeah, you
well, we
have
are
to.
talking about Chris
You
here. I
always
mean,
have to. You always have to respect that when people have done a lot in the business. I think that that deserves
all
respect
right.
from people like myself, and you can't just go in and act like you're on their level because you're not.
And you paid the respect that obviously he saw that coming a mile away. But the fact that you've worked with all these different people, I'm not going to ask you who your favorite person to work with is because that's not fair, and that's to anybody else. I mean, we'll talk off air, but because I've got questions, Joel, and I do, and I'm not going to ask about this or that. But it's interesting because your career, we'll wind it down because it spans so much, but you're still current. It's not like, well, I used to do such and such. Like the landscape might have changed, but you're still doing the things and taking time to teach. So, I mean, for somebody that's watching this or listening to WGAT, let's say like, okay, I went to the Mean Machine radio show and I was watching the thing and Joel Hoekstra was on there. What would you tell them? Which you might have gotten this question before, but someone that maybe they're struggling and they're trying to get their ribs down, they're trying to do this, they're trying to do their armbar, everything that they could do, and they want to give it up, but they know that somehow, some way, their heart is in it somehow, and the only time you fail is when you stop trying, type of thing. You being who you are, what would you tell an 18-year-old kid, the 18-year-old Joel? Like, what would you tell that person? Not just stick it out. Like, I have a feeling you have some words of wisdom there. What would you tell them?
Well, to outwork everybody else, basically, one way or another. And that can look totally different, especially today. Things have really changed in terms of content creation, online, digital presence. I mean, that's all stuff that when I was a kid was like non-existent. I mean, we were just like, all right, practice hard and get out and play a gig. And maybe take your band into the studio and record something. So, one way or another, people can find ways to remain productive, and that's really the key. But you touched on something with the stick it out thing, because I do think that there's something to that. It's 50% of it is probably just obstinance to being normal, like to giving in and being the person that goes like, you know what, I'm just gonna settle down and live a normal life. If you're the person who absolutely cannot do that and it's like not in your DNA, there's a lot of it that's just simply that. And but you to do that, you have to be willing to stick out some tough times. Certainly for me, like I mentioned, things didn't really click in terms of the success that I found until a little bit later, like my late 30s. So there was an awful lot of family gatherings and things like that where you're kind of deemed like the loser in the bunch, and you have to be
Oh,
willing to sit that kind of stuff out. And
you weren't above that. That was you as well, right? You
yeah, I
had
mean,
to.
I found a way to work hard and pay my bills. Like I said, teaching supported a lot of that. But as I said, there's a thing in general where you watch a lot of your friends go through college and get their degrees and buy their condo and get married and stuff like that. And you're kind of the guy teaching guitar lessons, gigging in bars on weekends, and wondering like, geez, so you got to be willing to sit
Mhm.
out periods like that where things feel like a little bit darker and just kind of realize like I'm just going to keep working and see what happens. And I made the decision very early on that no matter what, I was just going to do that for the rest of my life, one way or another, whether I found any success with it or not. And I think you have to make that commitment. So sticking it out and is important. Like, so you mentioned don't just say just stick it out, but yeah, the working hard while you're doing it is obviously very important as well. Because if you get disheartened and just stop working, it's almost like you kind of have to remove the emotional element from it a little bit and start looking at a little bit more like logical. Like, well, the amount of time I put in on it, it has to be more than other people. Otherwise, I can't expect to find success with this. I mean, I still am an artist in that I've released 3 solo instrumental CDs, which if I had to pay the bills with that, I would have died about 30 years ago. But
Nice.
But I also release albums under my side project, Joel Hoekstra's 13, and I've released 3 of those as well, and have a new one right now that's in the mix stage, and that's something that I can promote here and say that that's going to be out later this year. But to represent myself as an artist in music, to that degree, where I'm writing my own music and making artistic statements, that's important, I guess, in the grand scheme of things in my head for what I want to do in my lifetime, and have cool gigs, and I guess what you'd call be a sideman or a part of a band,
Right.
part of a more democratic process. You know, there are other projects that I'm a part of as well, like Revolution Saints with Dean Castronova from Journey and Jeff Pilson from Foreigner. You know, we release albums together. There's a project I have called Iconic as well that records. That's my Whitesnake bandmate Tommy Aldridge on drums, and Michael Sweet from Stryper on guitar and some vocals, and a wonderful young singer named Nathan James, and amazing bass player named Marco Mendoza. So you know, we release albums together. So all these things collectively, you just try a lot of things, and I guess, you know, the artist thing, the sideman thing, the music education thing, whether that's Guitar World or Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp or teaching remotely, all of these things, if you have time, you do them. And I find that most musicians do have the time. They just kind of sometimes opt out to sit on the sofa. And I'm not a sit on the sofa guy. I like to like remain active in all these ways, because you never really know where you're going to find your next thing. And you know, having Rock of Ages open up for me on Broadway after, you know, that show ran 6 years, came from subbing for my friend on pit gigs, where I was sitting down in the actual pit playing traditional Broadway pit music, and I subbed for him on 3 shows, when lo and behold, one of the guys who worked down there became the music supervisor for Rock of Ages, and says, I know the perfect guy that does this pit
Right.
stuff, that can
Other
do
guy.
this.
Yeah.
And so you
Right
get things
place,
that
right
open
time.
up. Yeah,
Right place, right time.
you get things that open up. Like there's another like cliche from all this, that work creates work. So the more that you work at things, the more you find the work happening, and then the busier you get with that work, the more people actually have to pay you for that work, or the quality of the work increases. And you know, sometimes it's glamorous and sometimes it's a blood sport, but you just kind of keep going, and you ride the wave.
A blood sport. Good. I didn't expect that one, Joel. That was good. That was good. I'm going to read the little something that we had right here. So we did mention Gods of Rock supergroup in Cantonia, Sicily, which I told you previous that my family on my mom's side, from all the places, that's where they're from, and you're going to be there next month, May 30th, right? I mean, you're going to be.
Yeah.
That's. I'm jealous. I would like to. Can you slide by and pick me up as you're on your way down there? I'm right here in Jersey. I'm your neighbor. Come on, man. Anyway, but that's awesome that you're going to be down there, and you got to tell me. You definitely got to come back on at least for a little while and tell me how that went, because that's amazing to me. So it says here that you're playing Florence Symphony Orchestra May 22nd, playing rock hits of the 60s, 70s, and 80s with them. Wow. That's right there. That's like Gen X, like Boomer, and then right into Gen X. So
yeah, Boomer into Gen X. There's some stuff that's definitely before my time, but it's been fun. I've been prepping for that gig right now at home in all my spare time, when I'm not teaching, and getting all that together, and getting the set for Sicily together. And then I have a live stream event not too long after that, that's going to be in Cologne, Germany. That's basically a Ken Tamplin Vocal Academy European Masterclass, I think is what it's officially called, but it's going to be at Dieter Dirk Studio, who most people know from producing the Scorpions. So legendary studio, and there's some of the best vocalists that I've had the pleasure of working with are going to be on that. Dino Jalusic and Gabriela Gunchikova, both amazing singers, and killer band. Tony Franklin from Blue Murder and the Firm on bass, and Ken Mary on drums, who's just an amazing drummer. So looking forward to doing that as well. And then, of course, over the course of the year, I've got a variety of gigs, the acoustic duo gigs I mentioned with my friend Brandon Gibbs, and playing with Broadway's Rock of Ages band. And then, of course, people can plan on the big Trans-Siberian Orchestra tour happening later this year as well.
Right, that's every November and December you go into that. Right, that Rock of Ages thing, that sounds good. But the fact that, yeah, hey, look, you and I, we're Gen X. So, but the fact that you're going to do some 60, you got some work ahead of you there. That's a big. That's got to be. Would you agree that late 60s and maybe mid to late 70s? Do you consider that the golden age of classic rock? I do, but I'm curious to see what you think, because that's a major major. I mean, that's awesome music.
Yeah, I think looking at a lot of the bands from the 70s grew up being able to gig an awful lot because the drinking age was 18, and so they were
Mm.
out playing, live shows 4 or 5 nights a week. Like I grew up in the Chicago area, and the Styx guys were coming up when that drinking age was that, and they were just gigging every night. They were rock stars when they were in high school. They were going into their class, and everybody was like, they were already famous, making money. So like a lot of the 70s bands like that, and then the 80s kind of became more that for guitar itself, I think, more than the other instruments. There wasn't a lot of that happening individually on the other instruments, but a lot of the 80s guitar players were certainly great motivating forces. And stylistically, that was a great era because that meant it was cool to dig on any style where somebody was amazing at guitar. You didn't just have to have it be like hard rock or heavy metal. We were all firing up our Al Di Meola albums and things like that, and listening to different styles because those guys were amazing players, and that was cool to do. So anyway, it was a great era to grow up in for guitar. It was very competitive.
Yeah.
And just so happened that the way my career rounded out was it became less about shredding and more about becoming musical and figuring out how to make myself valuable in all the other regards during that 90s period. And then when things took off, it became, oh, this guy can shred. That's awesome. Let's get him up on stage. He's got long hair and he can shred. So that's kind of roughly the way things have played out for me. But it's certainly been an interesting story, one that has taken a lot of twists and turns. But I love all that. I dig it. It's like I just stay actively involved in it, work hard, and see where it goes.
And that's what made you who you are. There was no script. You just kind of kept going forward, and I commend you for that, because you do a lot for a lot of people, and you bring a lot of people joy with your music, with your being as talented as you are and as versatile as you are. It's not, oh, he's just, once again, he's not just, oh, guy that shreds, or a rock guitarist, and then you're part of just that moniker. But no. Oh, by the way, Joel is in, the TSO. He's working in this guitar workshop. He's going to Sicily and playing 60s. People would be blown away and maybe would not believe that, but it's true. So they could get you on and check out some more information on www.joelhoekstra.com, which we have on there. Actually, I'll switch it to that. And I have one last question for you before we let you go, and I appreciate it. It's been great. It's impossible to get everything that you've done in one quick interview, so we'll have to have you back one day. But out of all the people that you play, actually, I'm going to flash this because I don't know if I mentioned it. So that's you with that's Joe Elliott from Def Leppard.
Mm-hmm.
You ever play with them, or is this just a guy you met? Oh, I like the guy in the background, by the way.
No, that's Vivian back there. That's Vivian Campbell flipping the bird. Vivian likes to photobomb and get the bird in there.
Yeah,
the Def Leppard guys are great guys. That's a great camp. So I guess I really met them when Whitesnake and Def Leppard had a co-headlining arena run in 2015, and just kind of made friends with all those guys. And Phil Collin, I play one of his model guitars, a Jackson, and when I did the Cher gig, I was using that on all the step outs. That blue Jackson, when you showed the picture of Cher and I earlier, that I was playing. So it just so happened that while I was playing with, well, I guess you can't see the body of the guitar, but when I was playing the residencies in Vegas with Cher, Def Leppard had a residency. So Phil came down to the show, and then I went to their residency, and that's where that picture of Joe and I was taken. So just kind of one of those things where they're just a great bunch of guys, all of them. And so just get along very well. Yeah, Joe's, great guy. And so we get along very well. Phil Collin and I kind of keep in loose touch and talk here and there. He's a great guy and great guitar player. I think Def Leppard's a great band. Just everything about that band collectively is about the songs. I really admire that, how they all kind of set aside their individual, like, hey, I'm gonna shred your face off. It's like, no, we're gonna play the guitar solo that people can't get out of their heads, and whatever it takes to have a great song. And so Def Leppard's very much about that. I admire that about them.
Foreigner as well. I was always big fan of Lou Grammatica, Lou Graham. And everything that they did. I mean, but you've spent time with some of the, Hall of Famers, not even just great guys, just rock and roll like royalty. I mean, and you continue to keep forging ahead. I appreciate it. It's so good. Doing what you do is so important because music is life. I say it all the time. It transcends everything, and you're not just reading it or playing it; you're making it, in my opinion. And you can't put a price tag on that. So I appreciate you stopping by, ladies and gentlemen. There you have. Do we have some clapping in here for this guy? Can we get some clapping? I mean, I don't know if there you go. They don't see that, but that's they can hear that though. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Joel Hoekstra. I appreciate you being by, Joel, and I wish you the best of luck at everything that you have going on right now and in the future. And we'll talk again right here. For those that were coming in, you're listening to the Mean Machine Radio Show on New Jersey 88.7 FM, WGAT, right here in the great state.
Hey, everybody, this is Joel Hoekstra from Whitesnake, and you're listening to the Mean Machine Radio Show on WGAT. Rock on, baby.
All right, excellent. And we're clear.
Cool.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you, man. That was pretty good. Yeah, that time you got the that was good. That was good. What did you think? You're pretty happy with.
You're listening to the best radio in the universe. Non-stop music. All day long.
You are listening to New Jersey's badass radio legend, Gregory Joseph on New Jersey 88.7 WGAI T-Rock Baby.